Morning, morning, morning. Good morning. Good morning to you.
Time for us to talk HR with HRMAB. And of course, we encourage you all the time never to miss it. Never to miss it indeed, because there's so much we can learn when we engage with HRMAB. And joining us this morning as past president and one of the champions, one of the pillars in the upcoming boot camp is Brittany Brathwaite. Good morning to you, Brittany.
Good morning, Pearson. How are you?
I'm well, thank you for asking. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well, thanks.
Good. Employment law is one of the pillars that will be tackled when the upcoming boot camp is held in March. Why is it critical to have that as one of the pillars that practitioners, when you come together, will be looking at?
It's critical because it forms the basis of just about everything that we do in human resources. And whether there are practitioners that are based locally, internationally, and we are going to have international persons coming in for the strategic boot camp, or regionally, understanding the parameters within which you operate and the legal parameters are critical to ensuring what you do aligns with all the best practices when as a practitioner.
Best practices for who?
Best practices for the industry, but also for you as an individual practitioner. It's very, very important. And of course, we have things like the ISO best practices for OSH and so on. In the same way that we have best practices and international best practices in different fields, we also have best practices in human resources. And part of what the bootcamp is intended to do is to identify those best practices so that all beneficiaries of the employment relationship, the employer, the employee, and participants like HR practitioners can benefit from those best practices.
There's so many aspects to running a business and to being a practitioner in HR, so many areas from health and safety to gender-based violence to gender equity, a whole host of things. Will all of that be covered under the employment law that you're looking at in the upcoming boot camp?
Well, yes. So there are two pillar champions under employment law, and I'm sure you will meet and speak with Michael Koyman soon on what he'll be touching on. From my perspective, I'll be looking at the regional and international trends. One of the same will be a spotlight initiative that I just participated in that was funded by the UNFPA under the Caribbean Employers Confederation, with whom I'm a labor policy consultant. And under that initiative, we launched a regional platform and initiative policy document to combat gender-based violence in the workplace. So that's one of the topics, but we're also going to be looking at trending international topics like developing policy to ensure we incorporate minority groups such as disabled persons or differently abled persons into our workforce. How is artificial intelligence being utilized in recruiting practices? Is it fair? What are some of the international policies and legislation that is being brought to the fore to address these things? And what should practitioners regionally and locally be looking out for and aligning their practices to?
Some would say a lot of what we do is cultural, and so we don't want to have somebody else's culture imposed upon us. How do you respond?
I respond by saying we need to pop our bubble. And even if we need to be cognizant, and it's very important to be cognizant of our culture and how we customize what we do for our people, it is nonetheless equally important for us to be aware of what is going on in the world around us. We continue to hear, our government and our prime minister talk about creating global citizens. And that's not just for children, it's for us as functioning adults, ensuring that we create global mindsets in the way that we position our businesses. And HR strategic partners are no different.
In parity here, you're talking about creating a space where the employer and the employee are operating at particular international standards and not just simply because we're just 166 square miles, that's the way we do it. Because we are competing with others in the world and we are engaging with others in the world, and so we ought to be able to operate at a particular level. And so when this bootcamp happens and we have that session with you, how interactive truly is it so that we can begin to apply a lot of what we will learn?
Yeah, so I mean, it's going to be very interactive. The slide deck that I'm going to be preparing will have links that persons can access the content and the information on their own. There's going to be practical information on how you can start to embed practices within your organization. And most importantly, there's going to be a level of sustainability that I will recommend. So, how do we take these practices that Brittany might be recommended through this strategic bootcamp via HRMAB, embed them in our working environment, but most importantly, sustain these practices so that person 5, 10 years from now can still benefit from them.
Regional and international practices and policies, and that's what you're hoping to be able to bring to the table in March when the HR boot camp happens. What have you found? What have you found that is interesting that perhaps Barbados HR is not yet implementing that you think has take some spotlight for a moment?
I think, the elements around the utilization of things like artificial intelligence in hiring and recruiting practices, delving a bit deeper and doing a bit better. And this is not to say that some HR practitioners are not doing a good job, but I think we can do better in the way that we incorporate minority groups into our workforces, particularly the disabled or the differently abled. So those would be two of the topics that would be top of mind in response to that question for sure.
Some would say to you in response to that, that requires governmental sanction, so to speak, because it has to happen at a higher level before it filters all the way down. How do you then respond to that?
And I respond to that by saying that you have to know the legal parameters within which you're operating. So we have the discrimination in employment legislation, which already creates a basis to prevent discrimination against certain groups and minority groupings. So we already have that there. So to say that we would need government sanctions, it's not that we're absent of government sanctions or policy that is trying to help us, but we also have to help ourselves. So even in the absence of a wider government policy, we can implement these things, and we've seen territories do better. So we can do better, even if there's better that can be done. But we already have a pretty decent basis.
So when there's better that can be done, how can we start the discussion within the workplace as HR practitioners, as people who care about people? How do we start that discussion in the C-suite so that we can see the movement forward?
Aligning your HR strategy with your business strategy is critical, and speaking the language of your CEO. So understanding whether your CEO speaks the language of numbers, help your CEO to understand what or how improving your headcount by X minority group might open you up to some funding. How does that also improve your numbers around diversity and inclusion? So it's not enough to just say to your CEO, well, yes, we want to employ 10 differently able persons this year. And he'll probably, or she might, and more than likely she will say, yeah, but what does this mean for us as a business? You have to speak business language, and you have to be able to create metrics that you'll be able to guide your CEO to understand how this HR strategy, initiative, activity eventually aligns with the business strategy.
This sounds as if it's really going to be quite a pillar indeed for the upcoming boot camp. And so I want to encourage as many people as possible to register for the upcoming HR boot camp in March. It was launched last week. Now we know it exists, and now we know what's going to be happening. What is it? It's a short, interactive and rigorous course of practical training in strategic business. That's one of the pillars indeed. And so we want to encourage as many people as possible to go to the website HRMAB.org.bb. HRMAB, HRMAB.org.bb, and register to be at the table to discuss all of these things, aligning your HR with business strategies, labor relations and employment law, mastering the numbers in finance and data analytics, and change management. All of these pillars indeed. And we want to encourage as many of you as possible to get ready and get active and get involved indeed by registering. One of those pillars will be employment law by Brittany Brathwaite. She will come with her vast years of experience, her huge wealth of knowledge, and certainly we can all benefit greatly from interacting with Brittany when she hosts her leg of the HR boot camp coming up indeed. So Brittany, I want to thank you, as always, for inspiring us in what you do so very, very well. And we look forward to even more interactions with you in the near future. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome indeed. Brittany Brathwaite, past president of HRMAB and one of the pillar champions of the upcoming boot camp in human resources to be held in March. Now, go to the website hrmab.org.bb and register. It's going to be really, really good.
Morning, morning, morning. Good morning. Good morning to you.